The rain hammered against the marble steps as Marcus Sterling stood outside his own mansion, water streaming down the collar of his worn jacket. For 3 months, he'd lived as someone else, an anonymous drifter, a nobody, all to understand the truth about the empire he'd built and the people who ran it while he played dead to the world. But tonight, something pulled him back. An instinct. A whisper in his gut that said go home. He'd planned to slip in through the servants' entrance, observe quietly, gather the last pieces of evidence he needed about the staff he'd entrusted with everything. His lawyers were waiting. The documents were ready. Tomorrow, he'd reveal himself and clean house. But the sound that stopped him cold wasn't what he expected. It wasn't laughter or music or the clink of champagne glasses from another one of his head butler's unauthorized parties. It was crying. Raw, broken sobbing that seemed to seep through the very walls of the house. Marcus's hand froze on the door handle. In all his months of investigation, living in cheap motels, working construction jobs, watching his employees from afar, he'd discovered embezzlement, theft, and betrayal that would have destroyed most men. He'd documented everything with the cold precision that made him a billionaire by 35. But this sound, this genuine pain echoing through his empty mansion, was different. It made him human again. The door swung open silently. The foyer was dark except for a sliver of light coming from the kitchen. Marcus moved through his own home like a ghost, his footsteps silent on the Italian marble he'd imported himself 5 years ago. The crying grew louder. Through the crack in the kitchen door, he saw her. Rosa Martinez. His maid. The quiet woman in her 50s who'd been with him for 7 years, who always left his study smelling like lemon and sunshine, who'd once left a note saying, "Don't forget to eat, Mr. Sterling," on a stack of contracts that had kept him working through 3 straight dinners. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her shoulders shaking, photographs spread out before her like a devastating hand of cards. Marcus had investigated Rosa too. Everyone was a suspect when you're playing dead. Her file was clean, suspiciously clean, his lead investigator had said. She sent 80% of her paycheck to someone in Mexico every month. She never asked for raises. She never took vacations. Red flags everywhere. But now, watching her cradle a photograph of a young girl, maybe 12, with Rosa's eyes and smile, Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. "I'm sorry, mija," Rosa whispered to the photograph in Spanish, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I can't bring you here yet. Mama is trying. I promise I'm trying." Marcus understood Spanish perfectly. He'd learned it to negotiate deals in South America, but he'd never told his staff. Another secret. Another test. Another wall. Rosa pulled out a letter, and even from the doorway, Marcus could see the official seal. Immigration Services. Her hands trembled as she read it again, though she clearly had it memorized. Petition denied. Insufficient financial proof. Applicant may reapply in 12 months. 12 months, Rosa sobbed. She'll be 13 by then. Another year without her mother. Another year in that place. That place. Marcus's investigator had found it, a girl's home in Guadalajara where Rosa's daughter lived. The file said Rosa had left Mexico 8 years ago to escape an abusive husband, had to leave her daughter behind with an aunt who later died. For 8 years, this woman had cleaned his toilets, washed his sheets, and polished his floors, sending every penny she could to keep her daughter safe and fed, saving for legal fees and documentation fees. And petition fees, building a case to bring her child home. The file had numbers. Cold, hard data. But it hadn't captured this. This mother's heart breaking in his kitchen at midnight, surrounded by pictures of the daughter she was losing one day at a time. Marcus Sterling, the man who'd built a tech empire on calculated risks and strategic moves, who'd faked his own disappearance to catch thieves, who'd trusted no one for 3 months, made a decision that had nothing to do with logic. He knocked. Rosa shot to her feet, frantically wiping her eyes and shoving the photographs into her apron pocket. "Who's there? The house is closed. Mr. Sterling is." She stopped as Marcus stepped into the light. She didn't recognize him at first. The beard, the worn clothes, the weight he'd lost living on diner food, he looked nothing like the man in the portrait hanging in the main hall. But then her eyes widened, her hand flew to her mouth, and she actually stumbled backward. "Mr. Sterling. But they said you were, the accident." "I'm alive, Rosa." His voice was rougher than he remembered. 3 months of silence did that. "And I need to tell you something." She was shaking now, terrified. Probably thought she was hallucinating or seeing a ghost. Maybe afraid she'd be fired for being in the kitchen after hours, for breaking down in her employer's home. I heard you crying, Marcus said simply. I heard everything. About your daughter. The color drained from Rosa's face. I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have been. I wasn't stealing anything. I just needed a moment, and I. How much do you need? Rosa blinked. What? For the petition. For the lawyers. For bringing your daughter home. How much? Sir, I can't ask you for. You're not asking. I'm offering. How much, Rosa? She started crying again, harder this time, but there was something different in it. Something like hope trying to break through 8 years of crushing weight. The lawyers said, 50,000. For everything. The petition, the immigration bonds, the travel, getting her settled here. But I could never. You'll have it Monday morning, Marcus said. And we're going to do more than that. We're going to hire the best immigration attorney in the country. Your daughter will be home before Christmas. That's 2 months from now. Consider it done. Rosa actually collapsed into a chair, her hands pressed against her face. Why? Why would you do this for me? Marcus pulled out a chair and sat across from her, this woman who'd worked for him for 7 years, who he'd investigated like a criminal, who he'd never really seen until this moment. I came back here tonight to fire almost everyone on my staff, he said quietly. I've been gone for 3 months, Rosa. Living like someone else. Watching. Testing. And I found out that most of the people I trusted were stealing from me, lying to me, using my home like their personal playground the moment they thought I was gone. Rosa's eyes were wide, glistening with tears. But your file, Marcus continued, your file showed me something different. Every paycheck, smaller than you deserved. Every day off you didn't take. Every time you stayed late without asking for overtime. I thought it was suspicious. I thought maybe you were too good to be true, that you had to be hiding something. He leaned forward, his voice thick with emotion he'd buried for years. But you weren't hiding a crime, Rosa. You were hiding your pain. You were suffering in silence, sacrificing everything, and still showing up every day to take care of a man who never once asked if you were okay. Who never saw you as anything more than someone who cleaned his house. You were a good employer, Mr. Sterling. You always paid me. Fairly. Marcus almost laughed, but it came out bitter. Rosa, I have 17 cars in my garage. I own houses in 4 countries. I spent more on my watch than you make in a year. And you've been trying to save your daughter for 8 years, $50 at a time, while I never noticed you were drowning right in front of me. The silence stretched between them, heavy with truth. I disappeared to find out who I could trust, Marcus said. But really, I think I needed to find out who I'd become. The answer is, someone I don't like very much. Someone who measured people by their usefulness. Someone who saw the world as numbers and transactions instead of human beings with stories and pain and dreams. He reached across the table and did something Marcus Sterling had never done in 7 years. He took Rosa's work-worn hand in his. Your daughter's name is Elena, right? I want to meet her when she gets here. I want to be there at the airport. And Rosa, I want you to know that you're not my maid anymore. You're my director of household operations, with a salary that reflects what you're actually worth. And Elena will have a college fund waiting for her. Full ride, any school she wants. Rosa was sobbing openly now, clutching his hand like a lifeline. I don't understand. Why? After you thought we were all betraying you. Because you showed me what real wealth looks like, Marcus said, his own eyes burning with tears he'd held back for 3 months. It's not the mansion or the cars or the company. It's having someone worth coming home to. It's being the kind of person who deserves loyalty instead of just buying it. It's knowing that somewhere in this house is someone who represents the best of humanity, someone who'd sacrifice everything for love without expecting anything in return. He stood up, pulling Rosa to her feet. Tomorrow, everyone who stole from me is gone. But you, Rosa Martinez, your family now. You and Elena both. That's not a job offer. That's a promise. Rosa hugged him then, this broken billionaire in his disguise, and Marcus Sterling realized that in 3 months of playing someone else, he'd finally found himself. Not in the corporate offices or the betrayal or the evidence he'd collected. But here, in his kitchen, in the tears of a woman he'd overlooked, in the chance to be something more than rich. He'd walked into his mansion looking for thieves. Instead, he found his humanity. And that, Marcus thought as he held this woman who taught him what strength really looked like, was worth more than everything he'd built.